Hello my friends and welcome back to the channel. Today we are back on the Battle for Azeroth beta, taking a look at the Fire Mage. If you're new to the channel, welcome, glad to have you here. We are releasing daily Battle for Azeroth beta content right now, so please consider giving us a subscribe if you're interested in that content and want to see more of it and you enjoy my voice. If not, that's fine, do what you want to do. If you're not new to the channel, if this is your second or third or fourth or however many video with us, welcome back, glad to have you back. So we are continuing our series today on looking at the different specs for the classes that I'm considering maining in Battle for Azeroth, and we are now on the Fire Mage, which has been one of my favorite specs in Legion, and I am really liking the way that it looks in Battle for Azeroth. So as we've been doing, we'll start by taking a look at the spellbook, and we'll start with the passives because these kind of really glue most of the specs in the game together with the interaction that they create between different abilities. So starting with Cauterize, which doesn't do any of what I just talked about. Cauterize is just your cheat death mechanic as a Fire Mage. If you die and you instead are healed to 35% of your health, and then you lose 28% of your health over 6 seconds, so you need to get healed up pretty quick. But while you're burning, your movement speed is increased by 150%, and you can't be slowed or snared. So this can save your life. Nice to have, and you don't have to choose a talent or anything to get it. So neat little perk of being a Fire Mage. Critical Mass. Crit is really important for Fire Mages, and this kind of helps to smooth out, especially at gear levels where you don't have a lot of crit, this kind of helps to smooth out the rotation. So your spells have a passive 15% increased chance to deal a critical strike, and you gain 10% more of the crit rating from all sources. So any piece of gear that has crit on it, let's say you get a chest, well, probably not a chest because those are going to be Azeroth gear. Let's say you get a belt that has 50 crit on it. You're actually going to get 55 crit from that belt because of this passive. Enhanced Pyrotechnics. Each time your fireball fails to crit, it will give you a stacking 10% chance for your next fireball to crit. And this will continue until your fireball does crit. So this is just built-in bad luck protection. So let's say you have a 40% chance to crit baseline, and that first fireball does not crit. Your next one is going to have a 50% chance. If that one does not crit, then 60, then 70, and so on and so forth until you do land a crit. This helps to smooth out the rotation a lot, especially lower gear levels as well. Now, Hot Streak. This is why crit is so important for fire. Getting 2 direct damage critical strikes in a row will make your next Pyroblast or Flame Strike spell instant cast and cost double the normal ignite damage. What's ignite damage? That's our mastery. So when you cast pretty much any of your fire spells, you deal additional damage based on how much the spell did over 9 seconds, and then if you deal another spell, then the remaining damage from that dot is added to it. So to give an example, if you hit with a fireball for 100 damage, that's less than a fireball hits for at even level 110. But let's just use that because it's a really simple number. If you hit for a fireball with 100 damage and the first tick does 10 damage, you have 90 damage remaining. If you get another fireball for another 100 damage before another tick, then it'll reset to the 9-second duration and it'll add that 90 that was remaining to 100, and now you have a 190 damage over 9 seconds dot on the target. Let's look at our active abilities now. Arcane Intellect is back for mages. Intellect buff for your party and raid. Really nice to have. A little bit of flavor at least. Blazing Barrier is your defensive ability. This is something that you can use when you have just need a little more survivability. It gives you a decent absorb shield. I have 24k health and it gives me about a 5,000 absorb shield. So that's a nice little boost. Could help save your life. Could at least help your healers out if you're in a group content. Blink is pretty much the same it's always been. You just move forward about 20 yards, unless there's something in your way, in which case you'll maybe move nowhere. Combustion is your big cooldown as fire, and it's the same as it has been in Legion. It engulfs you in flames for 10 seconds, very cool animation, and it increases your spell's crit chance by 100% and grants you mastery equal to 50% of your crit stat. So this increases, first of all, every spell that you cast during Combustion is going to automatically crit, and you will get double, or you'll get additional mastery, so that Ignite Dot is going to hit even harder during that window. We have Conjure Refreshment, and counter spells are Interrupt. Dragon's Breath is at this point just a AoE moderate damage, 727 fire damage to all targets in front of you in a cone, and an AoE disorient, but any damage caused cancels that disorient, so you can kind of treat it as a short range AoE interrupt if there's a lot of caster mobs about to drop something on your tank, but that's limited usefulness as far as actual crowd control goes, because you're typically going to be using it on targets that are taking damage. Fire Blast is the same as it has been in Legion. It has a cooldown that's reduced by haste, so that helps haste's value to fire, and it blasts the enemy for fire damage. It is castable while casting other spells, and it always deals a critical strike. So going back to our hot streak mechanic, when you get a crit from your fireball, which is just your normal filler ability, you can cast a fire blast during your next fireball cast, which will give you the hot streak mechanic, which will make your next pyroblast, which you can cast at the same time as that second fireball. It'll benefit from that buff. We'll show what that looks like a little bit in the gameplay toward the end of the video. Flame Strike is our AoE ability. Frost Nova is just a freeze. Ice Block is your immunity. Invisibility turns you invisible over 3 seconds and gives you a little bit of stealth, useful to escape or to survive if you're the last person standing at the end of a raid wipe, something like that. Living Bomb and Phoenix Flames are talents, so we'll look at those when we get to the talent tree. We've got Polymorph, we've got Portals, we've got Teleport, nothing new here. Pyroblast is your big damage ability as a Fire Mage. Now, it has a very long cast time, but like we talked about, that hot streak mechanic, if you get 2 crits in a row, which is pretty easy and pretty frequent as fire, it turns into an instant cast ability. So you pretty much only, barring a talent selection that we will talk about, you only want to be casting Pyroblast when it is instant. You don't want to be hard casting it unless you have a certain proc in the talent tree that we will talk about. Remove Curses back. Scorch is a movement filler. If you have no procs active and you need to move, you can continue to do a little bit of damage. You can see it does contribute to hot streak. It's got a really fast cast time, but it is really, really low damage. It does 230 damage. Fireball does over 800 damage. Fire Blast does over 1,000 damage. Well, I just had a proc there, so that's a little deceptive. Pyroblast does, closer to 2,000 damage. So Scorch is almost insignificant damage, but it is just a little bit extra that you can do if you have to move, which movement is one of Fire's really, really strong aspects. It can deal with movement better than almost any other caster spec. Slow Fall slows a group member's falling speed. This is really useful for open world stuff, or there are a few raid applications, but not very many. It could also be useful in some PvP scenarios. If let's say you're in a Arathi Basin and you're up at the lumber mill and you want to jump down to Blacksmith, you can use it for that. But generally, it's more of an open world type thing, more of a flavor ability than anything else. Spell Steal, you steal a beneficial magic effect from the target. It can last a maximum of 2 minutes. This is mostly for PvP. There are some raiding applications, but those tend to be few and far between. Teleport, normal, and Time Warp is heroism, bloodlust, Time Warp, whatever you want to call it, for your mage, for your group, and raid. So that's very similar to how we are in Legion, but there are some important changes to the talent tree that we will go ahead and talk about. In the tier 15, we've got Firestarter, which I feel like is kind of a lame talent once you get to max level. It's a decent talent for questing because you're going to start off every pull with a crit, but it just makes your Fireball and Pyroblast always deal a critical strike when the target is above 90% health. Now, the problem with that, as far as a rating application goes, the first 10% of a fight is almost never the most important or the most dangerous phase of a fight. Now, if you're in a fight where it is the most important or it is the most dangerous, or if you're in a really, really niche scenario like Odin in Halls of Valor, then sure, this is a useful talent. But for the most part, it's just a leveling talent, just a questing talent. But it is in the first row that becomes available at level 15, so I guess that's fine. The other two are pretty good options. Pyromaniac, casting Pyroblast or Flame Strike while Hot Streak is active, so that's those instant cast procs, has an 8% chance to instantly reactivate Hot Streak. So this will give you an extra proc that's just going to help you out, get a little bit more damage out. And then Searing Touch. This is one of the legendaries from Legion. Scorch turns into an Execute. It deals 150% increased damage and is a guaranteed critical strike when the target is below 30% health. This is really cool to have as a talent, and I'm actually really looking forward to playing with this talent on my mage in BFA, whether he ends up being my main or an alt. I'm looking forward to using this talent. Tier 30, we've got Blazing Soul. Casting Blink ignites a blazing barrier around you, so you can see if I blink forward, I get a blazing barrier. And note that it does not put blazing barrier on cooldown, so this gives Blink a little bit of extra survivability if and when you need it. Shimmer gives you 2 blinks that can be used while you are casting another spell, but it does have a slightly longer recharge time. Blink is 15 seconds, Shimmer is 20 seconds. So if we're talking about the scope of a longer fight, Blink might actually give you a little bit more mobility if you're using it close to on cooldown. And then Blast Wave, cause an explosion around yourself, dealing 561 fire damage to all enemies within 8 yards and knocking them back. Blast Wave is back to being a knockback ability and reducing their movement speed by 70% for 4 seconds. So this could have a lot of fun trolling effects. We'll see. I haven't actually tested how far that knockback is, but maybe we'll do some more testing tonight and see what exactly that looks like. In tier 45, we've got the same. These are pretty much unchanged from live. Incanter's Flow, just that damage bonus between 4% and 20% cycling up and down over time. Mirror Images drops 3 copies of yourself. It's a decent DPS cooldown, but it's also a threat drop, which is really nice. And then Rune of Power, which has really good synergy with Combustion for fire. Now, at the beginning of Legion, this was a mandatory talent for fire because of that synergy, and then it kind of fell by the wayside. Later in the expansion, as balancing continued to occur, but I don't know. I know it's not the most popular talent among mages, but I thought it was pretty cool to have that synergy where you drop your rune, and then you're precasting an ability, and then you pop your combustion, and you just have all of this synergy to get a really crazy amount of burst damage going. I thought that was pretty fun. Maybe it'll make a comeback. All going to depend on balancing which one of these is best. Tier 60, we've got Flame On, which reduces the cooldown of Fire Blast by 2 seconds and gives you a 3rd charge of it. Alexstrasza Fury, this is another legendary that's made its way into the talent tree. Dragon's Breath always critical strikes and contributes to Hot Streak. Now the problem is this does not increase the range on it, so you have to be really close to take advantage of this. And frankly, the other 2 talent options right here are much more attractive, I think. The 3rd talent is Phoenix Flames. This is exactly what your artifact ability has been. It's just now a talent. And yeah, so the unfortunate thing is you have to choose between having Phoenix Flames or Flame On instead of having them both. That'll make the rotation a little bit more frustrating, I think, but overall, the fact that we get to keep access to that is really nice when a lot of specs don't even have the option. Tier 75, Frenetic Speed, gives you a 30% movement increase for 3 seconds when you cast Scorch, which is nice because Scorch is your movement filler ability, so it just makes that even better. Ice Ward gives you a 2nd charge of Frost Nova, and Ring of Frost gives you that ring that you can drop, which, yeah, let's go ahead and show it. So you can drop it, and then anyone who runs through that ring while it's active, any enemy that does will be frozen in place. Tier 90, we've got Living Bomb, which does fire damage and then spreads to other enemies within 10 yards once it explodes. it can only spread one time. It has potential to be a ridiculously strong AoE ability in some scenarios, and in other scenarios it's going to be pretty weak. It just scales really, really well when you have a lot of targets stacked up. Conflagration gives you a dot from your fireball that's pretty low, but it does give Conflagration and Ignite, both dots, a chance to flare up and deal fire damage to nearby enemies. So it's just a decent little bit of passive single target and AoE damage, whereas these other two abilities might not even be used in single target depending on tuning. So Conflagration might be your go-to on single target encounters. Flame Patch. Flame Strike leaves behind a patch of flames which burns enemies within it for 600 fire damage over 8 seconds. So yeah, that's there. Tier 100, we've got Kindling, which reduces the cooldown on Combustion when most of your fire abilities critical strike. Pyroclasm, this is another legendary that has made its way into the talent tree, and we'll take a look at this in a minute when we get to the gameplay preview. And that is that Consuming Hot Streak has a 15% chance to make your next non-instant cast Pyroblast deal 300% additional damage. And you can have up to 2 charges of that. So if you get a couple of Pyroblasts in a row and you're trying to burn them so that you can cast the longer cast Pyroblast to make charge of this, you're not going to get any wasted procs from that. And then we've got Meteor, which is a big AoE damage ability. But let's take a look at what some of these are actually going to play like. So we'll just take Flame On. And we'll use Searing Touch. I guess we use Firestarter since we're on a dummy and they don't really lose much health. But we're going to take a look specifically at Pyroclasm and at the way Pyroblast in general works for fire. So we're going to open with a Fireball, and because this dummy is at full health, that is going to proc Heating Up, which means the next spell critical strike that you get will make your next Pyroblast free to cast. Okay, so let's see how we actually take advantage of that. So what we're going to do is cast a Fireball. Because this target dummy is at 100% health, it will crit, and then while we are casting a next Fireball, we'll hit Fire Blast so that we get a free instant cast Pyroblast, and we will cast that at the same time that the second Fireball launches. So it'll look something like this. There you go. And then you can just kind of chain them together forever, especially on targets that are above 90% health here. So now we're just waiting to get a proc on consuming that. And of course we're not going to get one anytime soon here. It's a 15% chance, so it's got to happen eventually, right? And this is generally the way that you want to play. Now, obviously, you're not going to have permanent 100% crit on all of these abilities, but when you get a hot streak, you still want to cast a Fireball and then unleash the Fireball and that Pyroblast at the same time, just so that they, because if they both crit, then you get another instant cast Pyroblast. If only one of them crits, as long as they hit the target at roughly the same time, so as long as you cast that Pyroblast right when you're finishing your Fireblast, you will get the Heating Up buff, and you will not lose it if the other one didn't cast. Okay, so there we go. Now, we've got this big, massive Pyroblast coming in, and we got another proc. Someone's dropping on Blizzard on me. So you can see, wow, it's just proccing back to back to back now. That's kind of cool. Yeah, lots of Pyroclasm procs. That's what this default weak aura on top is. The one on the sides is your hot streak. But that's what the basic gameplay looks like. When you use Combustion, you're going to want to cycle in your instant cast spells as much as you can with those instant Pyroblasts, because the goal with Combustion is just to get as many instant Pyroblasts in that 10-second window as you possibly can. So yeah, that's the Fire Mage in BFA. Please let me know if you guys like this video with a comment and a like on the video. If you made it this far, please consider giving us a sub on the channel. We really appreciate it. It really helps us out. We're trying to do some cool things with this channel, and having your support and just knowing that you guys are enjoying this content and want to see more of it is a huge encouragement to me. Thank you. Have a great day. And until that next video, bye-bye.